Life has a very interesting way of teaching us. We often think that to succeed, to be heard, to be respected, we have to shout louder, speak more, and argue endlessly. But have you ever noticed something very profound? The deepest waters make the least noise. The most powerful people often speak the least. Let me share a simple thought. Silence is not weakness, it's wisdom in action. Sometimes silence is more powerful than 1,000 words. When you stay silent, you're not giving up. You're gaining control. Control over your emotions, control over your reactions, and most importantly, control over your peace. I'm not saying be silent to suppress yourself. I'm saying be silent to elevate yourself. Because in silence, you listen. In silence, you observe. And in silence, you grow. Today, let's talk about how silence is not just an absence of sound, but a presence of power. In the culture we live in today, the world rewards those who speak louder, faster, and more often. We have been conditioned to think that if you're not seen, if you're not heard, if you're not posting, shouting, or expressing something constantly, you are falling behind. But the truth is, real power doesn't scream for attention. It doesn't beg to be noticed. It remains silent, composed, and deliberate. Because silence is not the absence of strength, silence is the presence of discipline. Silence doesn't mean you have nothing to say. It means you know when to say it and when not to. The wisest people in history weren't the ones who always had the most to say. They were the ones who knew how to hold their peace when everyone else was losing theirs. Silence is a strategy. It is not passive. It is intentional. In moments of conflict, silence is the greatest armor you can wear. It doesn't mean you're avoiding the truth. It means you're mastering your reaction. Because the moment you respond out of emotion, the other person wins control. But when you choose silence, you are choosing to keep your power. There's something profound about people who can sit in silence and remain unmoved. That's not fear. That's clarity. That's confidence. That's inner wealth. You don't always need to answer back. You don't always need to prove your point. You don't always need to tell people what you know. Sometimes the smartest move is to keep quiet and let your presence speak for itself. Because when you're silent, people begin to wonder what you know. They begin to pay attention. They begin to reflect. And most importantly, they begin to respect. Silence trains your spirit. It teaches you patience. It sharpens your ability to observe what others miss. People who are always talking are usually too distracted to see what's truly happening. But those who are silent are watching, listening, and learning. They are not behind, they are ahead. While others are reacting, they are discerning. While others are arguing, they are preparing. While others are wasting energy, they are building strength. We don't realize how much power is wasted in unnecessary words. We feel the need to fill every moment with noise, every conversation with opinion, every silence with sound. But the moment you learn the value of saying nothing, you begin to understand the value of everything. When you silence your mouth, your mind grows louder. You start hearing things you missed before. Your own intuition, the truth behind people's words, the real motives behind actions, and the wisdom in timing. Even in prayer or spiritual reflection, silence is not a void. It's an invitation. It's where the deepest revelations are born. It's where clarity meets vision. It's where your purpose can finally speak without the interference of external voices. Because the truth is, the noise around you can drown out the destiny within you. That's why silence is sacred. It's not just the absence of sound, it's the presence of awareness. Have you ever noticed how kings don't shout? Generals don't yell in panic? Leaders don't talk endlessly? They speak with precision, with intention, with pause. They understand that every word is a seed, and if you sow too many, you dilute the harvest. That's why silence is a filter. It stops what's unnecessary from escaping your mouth and destroying what's necessary in your future. You don't win battles by noise. You win them by strategy. You don't win respect by speaking more. You win it by showing restraint. You don't get everything in life by asking louder. You get it by knowing when to ask and when to wait. Silence gives you the space to wait, to watch, and to work in stillness. Not because you're afraid, but because you're focused. Not because you're passive, but because you're powerful, So when the world tells you to speak up, sometimes the wisest move is to stay still. Let them underestimate you. Let them wonder what you're thinking. Let them talk while you listen. Because eventually, they'll see that while they were busy making noise, you were busy making moves. Your value is hidden in how little you reveal and how much you understand. This is the paradox of true greatness. In a time when everyone wants to be noticed, the wise choose to be hidden. Not because they are afraid, but because they are focused. You see, when you truly know who you are and what you carry, you don't need to prove it to anyone. Silence becomes your robe, and understanding becomes your crown. You no longer operate to be seen, you operate because you see more than others do. Right? When you understand your value, you no longer chase validation. You no longer overexpose your thoughts, your plans, your emotions, or your future. You recognize that not everything sacred should be spoken. Some things lose their power the moment they are shared with those who don't understand them. So you guard your vision. You speak only when needed. You reveal only what must be revealed, because you know that real impact is often prepared in silence and released in purpose. Understanding is deeper than knowledge. Knowledge gives you information. Understanding gives you direction. People with knowledge talk a lot, but people with understanding choose their words with care. They understand that timing is everything. They know that saying the right thing at the wrong time can destroy what silence could have preserved. So they observe, they listen, they weigh, and they wait. They know that silence is the space where truth matures. And when it's time to speak, their words carry weight. Just think about it. Some of the most powerful people in history were misunderstood simply because they didn't reveal everything at once. Their silence wasn't confusion, it was design. They were building in the dark, while others were dancing in the light. But when their moment came, their results were undeniable. Why? Because they didn't scatter their energy trying to explain every step. They focused on the outcome. They worked in quiet confidence and let the results speak what words never could. Sometimes silence is the only way to protect what matters most. When you're building something meaningful, whether it's a vision, a relationship, a mission, or a future, you must be selective about where and how you speak. Not everyone is meant to understand your journey. Not everyone has earned access to your process. If you reveal too much too soon, you invite voices that were never assigned to your purpose, and their confusion can become your delay. There's a principle here. Wisdom is knowing what to say. Maturity is knowing when to say it. But greatness is knowing when not to say anything at all. Because your silence in a storm is not weakness, it's discernment. It's the ability to say, I will not waste my breath explaining myself to those committed to misunderstanding me. When you understand who you are and where you're going, you no longer need external confirmation. You walk in silent authority. Look at nature. The sun doesn't need to announce its arrival. The world just lights up. Lions don't roar to prove they're lions. They only roar when they must. The most precious metals are found deep in silence, under pressure, in darkness. That's where value is formed. That's where character is built. That's where destiny is shaped. It's not in the noise. It's in the quiet. And those who learn to master the silent spaces become the ones who rise without warning and reign without apology. You're not less valuable because you're silent. You are more powerful because of what you refuse to waste. You are guarding your mental energy. You are protecting your peace. You are conserving your fire for the moment it's needed. And when that moment comes, you will be ready. Not because you shouted your way there, but because you listened your way forward. Because you understood the power of hiding in plain sight until the right door opened. When you walk in silence, your spirit becomes sensitive. You pick up on things others miss. You notice details others ignore. You hear instructions others can't. And all of this gives you a strategic advantage. You're no longer reacting to life. You're responding with purpose. You're no longer distracted by noise. You're driven by clarity. And that clarity comes from choosing silence over self-promotion, peace over panic, wisdom over words. The one who understands doesn't always speak, but when they do, nations listen. And until then, they remain quiet. Not because they are forgotten, but because they are focused. There is a silence that doesn't mean absence. It means preparation. Silence is not the void where nothing happens. Silence is the environment where everything is being aligned. Some of the greatest changes in your life will not begin with a loud announcement, but with a quiet shift. Not everything that's powerful begins with a sound. A seed makes no noise when it begins to grow. A baby's heartbeat starts before a single word is spoken. Your greatest transformations will often begin on the outside because everything is happening on the inside. People misunderstand the role of silence. They think being silent is passive, weak, or even fearful. But silence, when it is chosen with intention, is the language of power. It is not the silence of surrender. It is the silence of strategy. You see, people who understand where they are going don't speak from frustration. They speak from purpose. They know the cost of every word. They measure their voice not by volume, but by vision. And they understand something most don't, that noise may attract attention, but silence attracts direction. Silence trains your spirit to stop reacting and start discerning. Every time you stay quiet instead of lashing out, you are choosing growth over ego. Every time you observe instead of interrupting, you are choosing wisdom over impulse. Every time you wait Instead of forcing, you are choosing faith over fear. And the world may not see it, but in the silence, your character is maturing, your vision is sharpening, your clarity is deepening. Okay? We live in a time when everybody wants to go viral. Everybody wants to be heard, to be seen, to trend. But impact is not built in front of a camera. Legacy is not written with applause. Real authority is not proven in arguments. What matters most is often developed in solitude. Leaders are shaped in silence long before they speak into microphones. Visionaries are forged in quiet places before they stand on global stages. Don't underestimate the silence. It is the proving ground of destiny. In silence, you learn to trust something greater than approval. You learn to hear what is not said. You develop an internal strength that is not shaken by external chaos. While others are distracted by noise, you are rooted in stillness. You are growing in places no one can see. You are finding depth while others are chasing height. You are learning what matters while others are shouting for what fades. This kind of silence is not about absence, it's about awareness. It teaches you to pay attention to your inner world. It trains you to separate noise from truth, hype from purpose, and emotion from clarity. And once you've tasted the power of that silence, you no longer depend on the opinions of others to define you. You no longer chase validation. You no longer beg to be heard, because you realize something powerful. When your silence is full of understanding, your presence speaks louder than your words ever could. It is in silence that you receive the instruction that others miss. It is in silence that your mind becomes fertile ground for divine ideas. It is in silence that your distractions are stripped away and your discipline is born. You see, the secret to building something that lasts is not doing what everyone else is doing. It's doing what others are too impatient to do. And silence requires patience. It demands restraint. But it produces results that outlive the noise of others. Don't be afraid to step back, disconnect, and go quiet for a season. Because when you do, you begin to rise with strength that no one can understand. You begin to operate from a level that doesn't need to explain itself. You begin to see doors open that were once closed, not because you forced them, but because you became ready in the silence. And when that moment comes, you will not need to fight for recognition. The world will recognize the weight of someone who has been trained in stillness. Because silence doesn't delay your destiny, it prepares you to handle it. Silence doesn't hide your potential, it protects it. Silence doesn't steal your voice, it sharpens it. The people who are changing the world are not always the loudest. They are the ones who understand the sacredness of silence, because they know that when it is time to speak, their voice will carry the weight of everything they built quietly